Hello, welcome to the May 6th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. We're going to get started here in just a moment. I'm going to do a quick audio test and make sure everything is coming through as expected. Bear with me just for a moment. All right, so it seems like my monitoring computer is fine. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is basically you ask questions and we'll try to give answers. You can ask questions by sending them in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de or by just going to the live chat field and entering your question there. When asking questions, it's always helpful if you could indicate which version of Cubase that you are using, if it's like Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, if you're running on a Mac or PC, and which version, also of like the generation, so if it's Cubase 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, that information is helpful, and which operating system you're running it on. And realize that my ability to answer questions in real time will soon not be possible. So I will try to go through all the questions in chronological order as asked. Periodically, if there's so many questions, I'm behind. I may lose some. If I lose some questions, I'll let people know. But if we could try to refrain from asking the same question repeatedly, if you don't see like an immediate response, that would be appreciated. As we're going through questions, all the questions will be indexed with timestamps at the, and we should have those pinned to the top of the comments field, so you could use that as a reference guide. Now it'll take several hours after the live stream. I have to go through and rewatch the live stream and kind of index all of the questions. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered on previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm is kind enough to compile that site. We have two people that volunteer their time. They're not Steinberg employees, to serve as moderators for the live stream. So we want to give a special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude for all their work in making a better community and environment for everyone. And we also want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude for all his work in compiling really relevant information and tutorials for the community and the Cubase Nation Discord. So with that, let's go ahead and we'll go get started. All right, so we see from a question, how come the sample track does not receive audio files from inside the project? So it seems like it always has to me. Let's just go ahead and take a look. So if it's every single file that you're doing, so if I have that file in my project and I just drag it directly to the sample track, we could just drag files just like that. It could be depending on it may be if you have a 192K sample rate file or 384K sample rate or something like that may not be able to be played back in the sample track, but generally just kind of dragging and dropping seems to work directly from the project window right into the sample track like that. So check if you select the file, you could probably see directly here what the bit depth and and all of that in bit depth and sample rate of the file is. But it looks like any file that I just drag and drop, or if I just drag a loop from Media Bay here. So let's say if I just want it to come, and I could drag from Media Bay to right in. I could drag from Media Bay into a project. So let's say if I just want to drag this into the project file, and then from the project window right into the sample track. So we can now just so at that point, that seems to be kind of working as expected. So let me know if when you're dragging a file, if it's like maybe a particular file, if it's a FLAC file versus a WAV file, something like that, that might make a difference as well. But it seems like it's working as expected with standard WAV files. And I checked 32-bit, 32-bit float, and 64-bit files right before the live stream, and doesn't seem to have any issues. All right, so we have a question from Alex Morgan. Is there a way to separate parts on the grid, either MIDI or audio, so the region is separated at grid value, similar to the divide audio at hit points function? So there's a couple different ways of doing this. One is you could probably make a macro to go to the event, navigate one bar, and choose to split the events. I think we could do that from the edit menu. So we could choose to split at cursor, navigate over one measure. So, we could do that. But probably an easier way to do this, if you wanted to make a whole series of new events, let's say at the bar, is just grab the scissors tool and hold down the Alt or Option key. So let's say I cut here, and let's say I wanted to go one measure over, and I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key with the scissors tool. And as we do that, it'll now automatically cut based upon the space between the first cut and the second cut, so that everything can automatically just be split at one measure like that. So again, so if I wanted the track below to be split every 2 bars, I would cut, go 2 bars over, holding down the Alt or Option key with the scissors tool, and now it's going to cut into into 2 measure intervals versus single measure intervals. So let me know if that would work for you, Alex. Okay, so we have a question. Greg, today I noticed a very strange behavior in Cubase, cutting off reverb tails. I'm on Cubase 12.0.1, tested VSS4. I did the same on Reaper with no issue at all. Thanks. So one is, you could check it in the Cubase 12.02, but let's say I'll just try just a little bit of a reverb tail. So, and if you could let me know if it's doing the same thing on, if it's only that particular reverb. Is that the TC Electronics reverb? But if you could let me know if that is only doing for like a particular, that particular reverb. And if you're running, both the VST2 or VST3, and if it's 64-bit, obviously that would be good to know. But let's say I'll just try like maybe a snare hit or something. All right, so let's say I want to do something like that and put a huge reverb tail on it. So I'll just try one of the reverence. So we'll try Grand New York Ballroom. So this should have a lot of reverb time. And we'll see if we hear it cutting off here. And I think I maybe want to get one that's longer. Here's just a reverb of, I think this has like 6 seconds or so. So let me know if it's only with that one particular plugin that you're finding it, and if you're running both, if it's running an AU version on another program, if you're on Mac, or if you're running, or if it's VST3. And also, there is a 12.02 that's coming out, but I don't think that would have an impact on it. But if you try a different reverb plugin, let me know if it does it with all reverbs or just that one particular reverb. And if it's just that one particular reverb, it could be that would indicate to me that it's maybe systemic to that particular plugin. Or if you have a gate on the track, that maybe the gate is cutting off the reverb tail beforehand as well. All right, so we have Ezog just checking in. Excuse me. So I have a question. Can we please use the Cubase 12 demo project by Bezier as a template? So I think as long as you have, if you could download the project, that you should be able to save it as a template. I don't think that would violate any copyright infringements or any copyright issues if you're not using any of the actual material in it. But I think you should be able to save it as a template. I'm not a legal scholar on DAW use and copyright, but I think it's pretty much just melody and lyrics. All right, so we see Jazz Dude on. We have Benny from Sweden, as well as Razel from Denmark. We have Alexander Plasko checking in from Connecticut. Question from Dallas Aru. Is there any real advantage or disadvantage to recording in 32-bit float over 24-bit? When it can make a difference as you're recording, if you are recording with plugins on the input channel, so let's say if we wanted to look at our input channels here, one of the big things that it can make a difference is if you're recording and capturing at 24-bit and then you're wanting to also add effects in EQ during the tracking process, that's when 32-bit float will allow you to maintain the 24-bit captured audio file, plus be able to accommodate and have more information for DSP processing. So if you're capturing with effects, then that would make sense to use the 32-bit floating point. But I would think any other time it would be, if you're not doing printing with effects, that the actual tracking might be a little negligible and might be hard to determine for most things. All right, so we have Vian in Stockholm from Cubase Index on the live stream. Thanks for joining us and for everything you do with Cubase Index. All right, we have Soren also from Sweden, John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, we have Omar checking in from France. One thing I want to mention just before we get too much into it, there is currently a cross-grade promotion. We've had a lot of people kind of looking to get into Cubase from other programs that may have just gone all subscription. So just to be aware of that, you can check it out on the Steinberg website. Okay, so we have a question. Greg, what is the best way to use the UR24C with the M Audio Axiom 61 keyboard with MIDI or USB cables? If it's MIDI, the keyboard must be powered by what? And settings in Cubase. So you could probably run both of them off of USB. If you needed to run it via if you needed to run it into a particular into the MIDI input of your UR24C, you could definitely use that. But probably, as you mentioned, most of the time most controllers will be receiving the power to the controller via the USB as well. So there's no real advantage to powering it and then having a USB cable. So you could have many people would use the UR24C for interfacing with older keyboards, or if you have like MPCs or drum machines, and being able to use the MIDI in and out for those devices that don't have USB. So it's probably you're fine having both your controller and the UR24C on USB. So. All right, so we see Sir Robert from Atlanta, Georgia. Great to see you on. Okay, so we see, so it says, we have a question. Hey, Greg, I love Cubase 12. When will there be a new deal for Cubase upgrades? So generally we don't announce like when the upgrades or updates, but generally there will be, constant promotions going on throughout the year, but nothing that's been announced yet. All right. Wonderful to see Millard Brown back. I think we missed you last couple of live streams. Thanks for joining us. And Millard's in Pennsylvania. All right, so we have a question. A couple months ago, I asked about a problem I have with my sustain pedal. Every time I use it to play, the first available track on my project is panned to the right. How can I fix this? So it probably is something where something is taking your sustain pedal information and then maybe transforming that, or taking an incoming MIDI message, and at that point, turning it over. So if you have a control surface, something maybe like a Mackie control, you want to make sure that the Mackie control does not have the MIDI port where your controller is connected. So as you do this, we want to just make sure that, that this is not set to like all MIDI inputs. And then when you hit your sustain pedal, it's actually triggering a MIDI message from your Mackie control to pan. We could also run into this, so any of the remotes, including generic remote, or if you even have it set for VST quick controls or track quick controls, if you have, these set up, and you have these particular controllers, if you did an accidental MIDI learn, look to see if you have controller 64 available for any of these. If you're using your controller as a keyboard to control different things, or also within the generic remote settings as well. So somewhere in one of the remote controls that is set up, that MIDI message is being kind of turned into panning, and it's probably, if you have a control surface, it's probably one of those things that is setting it to do panning on it. All right, so we see Greg, please, how to set up control room. I use just the UR24C in home studio, so it's the same interface I think I'm using on my live stream. So what I do is, make sure, we have the UR24C set up directly here. And what I have mine set up to do, because it's two outputs. So I set my outputs. I have a stereo out and I leave it not connected. I enable the control room. I right click to add a monitor. I have 4 monitors already configured here. At this point, I would just say, I would send my mix left and right to monitor, to my monitors, and you could label it like I did here for my Yamaha HS7s. And at that point, so define the output like a stereo output, set that to not connected, add a monitor in your control room, and set that to like the mix left and right of your UR24C. Okay, so we see question, will Cubase have any mixing contest coming up? So generally, contests can be really tricky. So I haven't heard of any plans for one. And, mixing can be incredibly subjective as well. It's like, you could have like 100 great mixes. They're all different. Which one is better? It's, incredibly subjective. And some of those promotions that, like a composition contest, I think, there's a major sample library instrument orchestral developer did one. It was like, a bit nightmarish from reaction, and no one liked the winner, and, it ended up kind of being a big mess with that. So I wouldn't anticipate us doing a mixing contest and having a panel of judges. We'd rather kind of focus more on providing great solutions. Okay, so and this is a follow up to the sustain pedal from Georgios. Says your first answer didn't help, couldn't identify the CC info anywhere about that. So, you know, when you come over here, try setting, if you go to your studio setup and go to your generic remote, any of these remotes that you have set up, like generic remote, Mackie control, any of those, make sure that, you know, you could set all of those to not connected and see if that is still doing it, you know. But generally, you know, hitting the sustain pedal isn't going to automatically remap the controller unless it's been set up here to do that particular function. So if, you know, if you have a generic remote, Mackie remote, quick controls, track quick controls, make sure that all of these are set to not connected and see if that makes a difference as well. Also, if you could let us know if you do have a control surface, that would be, you know, interesting information as well. So. All right, so we see, hi Greg, I like the feel, question, I like the feel of live drums, but the sound in Groove Agent is wow. So can I record that live analog drums and somehow convert it to Groove Agent SE2? Thank you. Yeah, so there's a couple ways of doing this. One is you could, so if you have a live drum performance, you could obviously with Groove Agent have it automatically, you know, record the MIDI data from like an electronic drum kit. But if we have, all right, and I'll revert this because we have now monster reverb going on. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to do, like, I like the live drums in this example, but I have like a Groove Agent kit. So that I wanted to maybe replace the sounds of, so I could come here directly to like my kick drum, and I'm gonna go to the hit points tab in the sample editor. So you double click. And what I'm gonna do is just kind of come over here, adjust the threshold. And then I'm gonna have this Groove Agent track selected. I'm gonna say, let's convert those to MIDI notes. And I'm gonna put this to C1 and hit OK, and it's gonna go onto the first selected track, or we can make a new track or paste it into the project clipboard, hit OK. So now that's created MIDI notes, retaining the dynamics and the velocity of that particular part. So if I wanted to mute the audio kick drums and just hear the sound of Groove Agent, and I can make this louder. So if I want to take that particular part, wanted to tune the drums. So once you have the hit points, you could just double click, go, and at that point just say create. And you may see in Cubase 12, you may have to just click on this little tab here and just say create MIDI notes, and then that will allow you, like on a selected track or on a new track, just automatically have those notes. So you could have the feel of the live drums, but the sound quality of Groove Agent. All right, so we see Spike Williams checking in from Wales in the UK. Thanks for joining us again. We have Tiago from Brazil. We also have Robbie Bowling from Dallas. We see Michael Pierce on. All right, Uno Memento from Finland, and he's passing on 2 pints for everyone. All right, and we have Samson Strike checking in from Austria. All right, so we have a question from Michael Pierce. I'm fairly sure the answer is no, but do any of the native plugins implement an all-pass filter? If not, could they? Handy mixing tool. So, you know, if You know, so if you wanted to kind of break down like different frequency ranges, you know, one of the tricks that you could do is, you know, I'm not sure if you wanted to just take different frequency ranges and be able to customize that with the all pass filter. But if you come to, let's say, the Imager plugin, and then if you don't apply any of the processing here, you could just say, okay, I want to only listen to okay, and I'm gonna put it on the master track. Sorry about that. So I'll put on my stereo out. So just get to the Imager plugin again. So now if I just wanted to kind of carve particular frequency ranges, so I think obviously it's always passing, you know, all of the bands, and just make sure I'm just gonna. So if you're doing kind of like an all pass filter, so I'm not sure if you wanted to listen to different frequency ranges within your mix to do that, and you could obviously change the frequency points. But let me know if that's what you mean by kind of an all pass filter for mixing. All right, we have Gerald Ely checking in from California. And he's got the East Bay Grease with his nice Tower Power reference. So I haven't seen those guys in a long time. I remember concerts. All right. But he used to record all their shows in Cubase for a number of years. Okay, so we see about the VSS4. So it's says seems to still be an issue with the VSS4, still not M1 native, running via BlueCat. So yeah. All right, so we have a question from Paul Claridge. Hello, Greg. I was trying to add a VCA fader to selected track and it would not work. Can you show me perhaps if I'm missing something? So it always seems pretty straightforward to me. So let's say if I just wanted to do this, we add track and then add VCA fader to the track. So as we listen to this, if I wanted to, let's say solo our bass, or if I wanted to do it for drums, for like multiple tracks. So let's say we'll do to all the drums. And that's the kick drum that we did the trigger on earlier that we're hearing. So it seems pretty like it's just kind of working as expected here. Let me know if I did it differently than you did, Paul. All right, we see Mark Rabin on the live stream, and we also have Chief Theodore checking in from Southeast London. Thanks for joining us, being part of the community today. And we have Juha from Finland. And we see Nick is also on the live stream. All right, so we have FJ Segovia. He's checking in from Madrid. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we just see a question. Hi, Greg. I'm on Cubase 12 Pro. I experience clicks when my mic is enabled as an input. It's subtle, but it's a subtle and not noticeable crackle. I don't have to arm it or even have an audio track. Enabling it is enough. Okay, so this for Martin. So I'm not sure if it's a microphone that's connected to a particular audio interface or if it's like a USB microphone. So and you just say it's soft but subtle but noticeable. So if it's a USB microphone, the one thing that you could definitely try is just coming over, and if you select the audio system when you do this, is just and if you go to the control panel for the audio interface, see if you adjust like the buffer size, if you raise the buffer size up, if that goes away, and also if there's it's just says experience clicks when my mic is enabled as an input. It's subtle but but noticeable crackle. I don't have to arm it or even have an audio track. Enabling it is enough. So let me know if you're enabling when you're enabling the mic, or if it's just like an onboard mic, or if it's a microphone that's connected to an audio interface with an XLR cable. That information would be helpful. All right, so we have a question. Hello, Greg. Is it possible to copy CC1 data to velocity, possibly with a logical editor? End result being that the velocity points are equal to values in the CC1 data whenever there's a note on event. So there's it might be the other way around, but there is kind of a preference for or a logical editor preset. Let's see if we can get it to come up here. All right, so let's say if I'll just draw in some modulation data here. Okay, so let's take a look. And I think one of the, didn't like that. Bear with me just a second. All right, so let's try this again. Okay, so let's look at the logical editor. I think that there is like a turn velocity to CC that maybe we could kind of backward engineer. All right, so this is an insert MIDI volume for velocity. All right, just... Okay. Okay, so how this works, I'll just look at it here. All right, so we could see okay, so let's say if we do this controller equals controller 1. And we want to turn this into value 2. Right. Yeah, so I don't know of a way I could play around with it some more. Let me just see if there's anything. Maybe in the new factory presets, there's a whole slew. But generally, since it is, you know, a continuous controller and the velocities associated with, you know, and the velocity is part of the MIDI note message. So you can kind of take that value and apply it, but maybe not the modulation data that is, because the modulation data isn't tied to a particular note. But I can see if I could play around with it. If you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I could take a stab at it and spend some more time over the weekend. But you could take velocity to CC data, because at that point you could just say do this, but the actual, you know, you may have control changes that don't happen with, you know, like in the middle of notes, that could be hard for it to put a velocity, since the velocity is tied to a particular note message. All right, so we have a question. Hello, Greg. Question: how can you do it in the piano roll when you draw in some notes and you want to make another melody within the same track as in FL Studio? Is that possible in Cubase? So, you know, if you have, I guess if you just wanted to draw some notes and make a melody. So let's say if I just, you know, so I would just select the pencil tool and be able to draw notes. And if you wanted to have these automatically tied to particular keys, we could enable, okay, so let's say I want everything in D major and I wanted to snap pitch editing. So now I can only draw notes in. So if I wanted to draw in a C, I can't really draw in a C pitch. It'll restrict, but you could just kind of draw notes in directly like so. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do. All All right, so say you draw some notes in and want to make another melody within the same track. So, if you wanted to draw notes in, let's say if we have these here and it's, we could just continue to draw notes in. So let me know if that's what you want to do. All right, and we have Rahim from Trinidad. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see question, are there any issues with Antelope Discrete 4? Would fit my studio perfectly. So I haven't had any experience, so a lot of times companies don't, send me every interface to test out, but you may want to see if there's any indications. If you go to the Steinberg forums, that would be a great place, or if there's anyone here that's actually is using an Antelope Discrete 4. So I know like their previous, the engineer Igor, I have a tremendous amount of respect for, but he's also like I used to run in, and he used to be with Aardvark, based in Michigan in the U.S. And I think they're in Bulgaria now or something like that. And I had an Aardvark Q10 for a number of years in my studio, and I like that interface quite a bit. So, but I haven't ever. I haven't actually used that or heard much of it as well. So we see Michael Pierce. Does Greg ever accidentally hit save on a live stream? So I always have backups of the projects just in case. But I think I may have messed up one project recently where I hit save and I have to go back and kind of fix it. But I try to be, years of experience, 30 years of experience of not hitting save to overwrite your project file. All right. So we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Thanks for joining us today. And I think the virtual ice cream will begin. All right. We see Nick is telling people to hit the like button, that it's feeling neglected. So we don't want the like button to feel neglected. So everyone make Nick happy today. All right, so we have Steve O from Montreal. Thanks for joining today. Haven't been to Montreal in a while. All right, my chat field just jumped on me. Let me find my spot. Okay, so I'm close to where I was. Let me just find. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to select a group of notes in the piano roll and scale their timing up or down, sort of like stretching the group of notes? So if we just kind of, select these notes here, we could just go to the edge and be able to change the length of notes there. So if I wanted to take these particular notes, we could grab it and, from the beginning, or grab it by the end of one of the notes in the selected group and kind of scale the length or start position accordingly, like that. So I think that would probably do it for you. Let me know if that is what you had in mind. All right, and we have P Zone 36 checking in. See, Mark Raven is saying the Tower Power woke him up to horns, so that's good. I started off on trumpet, so I like horn bands. Big Chicago fan. And all right, we see Kerwin Young on a live stream. congratulations on, I saw you got your Blu-ray of with the movie with one of your pieces of music in it. Congratulations. Okay, so we have a clarification on the all-pass filters. Meant for the ability, this is from Michael Pierce. So question is meant for the ability to manipulate phase sound, a specific frequency without actually EQing it, and control with Q which frequency phase returns to normal. So I don't think that there's anything in Cubase that does that off the top of my head, but I'll pass it along as a feature suggestion. They're always kind of looking for new, interesting, like plug-in ideas. So I'll pass that along. Okay, so we see P-Zone 36 is laptop problem is fixed and the Focusrite driver issue works fine now. So thanks for letting us know. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, I want to ask if it's possible to show how we can hear only delay effect without the main signal and control it. Thanks. Okay, so we could do this utilizing the control room. So let me just put it on a vocal here. All right, so say we want to put a delay on this vocal. So I'm going to add an effects channel to the selected channel. I'll just throw like a mono delay on. Okay, and we'll make it, let's say, about a quarter note delay. Okay, so let's say. All right, so often when we want to do delays and we wanted to isolate the particular effects, we come over and let's see if we have, all right, so we have our delay here. So if we solo the delay, we hear the original source. So let's say as we do this. But if I only wanted to hear the delays, what we could do is make sure that you're using the control room. So, and we could do this in the audio connections. And so we want to have the output set to not connected and our monitor configured in our control room. And as we go to the control room, you'll have a listen enable. So let's just say I wanted to come here and so if I wanted to only hear the delay without the source signal, and I'll just go ahead and, so all you had to do then is, as we're working with this, exactly. So we're not hearing the original signal, just a delay. So if I wanted to EQ just a delay. So instead of hitting solo where you hear the original, just hit the L. And then all you're hearing is the delay itself. So you use the listen bus and then it won't actually have the source signal going in as it's soloed. So just hit the L button instead of S when you have the control room active, and then you could hear just only the reverb or delay for EQing and stuff like that and further processing. All right, so we see Best Korean Jesus is lurking and learning. So thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see a question from Omar. So with Cubase 12 Max, suddenly all grids have changed. The grid shown on the arrangement window is different of my project tempo, and the editor can't set up the grid as it was neither of my locations correctly. So one of the things that had changed, so let's say if we go to like your grid editor here, so let's say, we have this in version 12. So let's say, if I wanted to nudge events, I could, if I have a particular event here, I can nudge it by bar. So let's say, okay, I'm just going to move this over by measure, or we could say, okay, I want to move this by quarter note. In previous versions of Cubase, this was always kind of linked to the particular master time format. But in Cubase 12, you could also now choose to unlink to the primary time format. So if I say I want it to nudge by seconds or milliseconds, or now as we do nudge, we're not tied to bars and beats, but we're just going to actually nudge by seconds or by samples, depending upon what time format you're in. So if you want it to behave like previous ones, come over here and you'll say link to primary time format, and you could see this directly in the grid. And if you don't see kind of those grid settings, you might have to enable it here. So where you could, the grid type. So if we don't see that, I think you could, maybe it's not grid type. So, but just look right there, and that's probably what you're describing, I think, Omar. Okay, so we have a question from Jack. Hi guys, I'm new to these live streams. Are they tutorial based or something else? Sending love from the UK. So what it is people ask questions and we give answers. So whatever questions, so think of it as a live Q&A setting. All right, so we have a clarification from Martin saying it is a USB mic. So, sometimes it could be like the USB cable that could cause that. And this is with hearing noise, a previous question with hearing noise. But definitely try raising the sample rate, or not the sample rate, but try raising the buffer size and see if that makes a difference. Sometimes USB mics will have interference, with, USB, just having other datas, like, I went into a studio and someone had like a USB mouse, and every time they did that and a USB audio interface, and they were both like, as he moved his mouse, he could hear like quietly in the background. But definitely try to raise the buffer size and see if that makes a difference with that. All right, so I see from Krishna Kumar that I missed his question. So let me see if I could go back. Sorry about that. Sometimes not every question gets asked shows up in. So I just kind of went back to the beginning and I didn't see any question from you. Maybe if you could ask again, sometimes maybe if it's too many characters or something, it may not show up. So, but we saw that, your comment, I missed your question, showed up. So maybe if you could ask again, sorry about that. And maybe if someone else sees it, they could copy it and put it in again. Okay. right, so Benny wants people to hit the like button. All right. All right, see some more clarifications from Michael Pierce. So thanks for that. Okay, so we just see quick question or comment. Iconica seems brilliant but expensive. Does anyone have an opinion on NI Berlin Orchestra Inspire? So yeah, I mean the Iconica is a wonderful library. So if you get a chance to check it out, you know, and it's a huge library, and it's going to have kind of the automatic creation of all of your articulations. So if you have other libraries that you have to perhaps make articulation maps for, you know, you may save $100 or $2, but then spend, you know, a month creating articulation maps that are automatically created for the Iconica. So okay, just reading through some comments. All right, so we see loading soon. Just ask, who knows why my direct monitor is always disabled? If you're on a Mac platform and you go to direct monitoring, because we utilize Core Audio, the Mac operating system for, you know, the Mac audio subsystem in Mac OS. So within Core Audio itself, they don't have direct monitoring, is not a function. So Apple kind of chose to let the audio interface company do that, so you don't see it. If you have a Steinberg interface, we have enabled direct monitoring because that kind of ties into the DSP utilization of the interfaces. So that's why you see direct monitoring. So if you're on Mac OS, it's just because Core Audio on Mac doesn't offer direct monitoring. Many of the audio interfaces, you could go into their like little mixer applet and enable direct monitoring there, but as an operating system, Mac OS, for some unknown reason, doesn't offer direct monitoring as a part of Core Audio. Guess they didn't copy that part right. All right, we see John Koskinen just saying, if you learned something, please hit the like button. Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. Okay, so we just see a question. Hi, could anyone use a demo of MIDI expression while we're on MIDI? I could. All right, so let's say if we wanted to do, let's do a new project here. All right, so if, you know, so there's kind of note expression as well. So let's, I think that's what this is about, versus kind of expression maps. So but let me know if this is, all right, so let's say if I record a particular note chord here. Okay, so I just recorded some chords. So if we wanted to do like note expression editing, you know, we could, when you have this little icon enabled here, we could double click to open the note expression editor. So if I double click here, we could go to note expression and just say, okay, I wanted this to do this note in the middle to do panning. So I could select panning. And now at this point, I could just kind of draw in panning just on one note within a chord. And let's say this note, I wanted to do tuning. So let's say the highest note in a chord, but not affect the other notes. And let's say the low note here, I want this to do cut off. So now as we play these three chords, so we'll play three chords. So we'll hear one note pan in the middle. This note, this A note here will kind of go crazy with pitch, and this will allow us to change the filter just on one note within a chord. So just by double clicking, we could have on particular notes, we could have independent expression on particular notes. And if we wanted to see those, we could just click on this particular icon here. So say, okay, we wanted to look at volume or panning. So we could see those. So let me know if that's the expression that you mean. All right, so we just see a question. Is there a MIDI remote template for the Yamaha Modi X6 keyboard? So with the Modi X, so, you know, I don't think that there comes with one, because I think the default mode for a lot of the controls in the Modi X are for the internal sounds. So a lot of times people, they may be tied directly to that, but it's easy enough to make one. So if you just go to the MIDI remote tab, you could just, you know, come to, let's say we go to a new MIDI remote here. You click on the plus sign, define the input and output ports, and then you could just move the knobs and define those inside of Cubase. There's also a reference if you get to the Steinberg forums, and probably Jazz Dude will be kind enough to post a link where people are collecting different remote templates, like user-created remote templates. So you may be able to find one in there. So we see from Samson Strike, hi Greg, when does the phrase manager come again? Please help. So if this is with the interactive, I'm not sure if the phrase manager is referring to the former interactive phrase synthesizer, which was in VS, like Cubase VST5 and earlier, so about 22 years ago. So there isn't kind of an equivalent for the interactive phrase synthesizer, but the developer who created that on the Atari, Werner Kracht, I believe, I think he's the one who did it. He's still a Steinberg employee. So, you know, who knows if we'll see it come up again, but it was kind of almost a synthesis for harmonies. It was pretty slick and cool. All right, my chat field just jumped, so let me find my spot. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is there a way to set the legato mode in MIDI quantize to have a few ticks over on global preference scale? Sometimes it's important for certain sample libraries to have small MIDI overlaps. So let's take a look. So this, my wonderful composition may be good here for this. So let's say we'll go to length. Okay, so I think if we come here, we could see, so let's say we apply legato, and that will kind of hold it there, but there's also an overlap function here. So if we wanted to say, you know, it just wanted to go so many ticks over, you could adjust the overlap directly there. So give that a shot. So you could adjust it by different ticks there. So once you're in the key editor, just go to the length tab here. And then you could adjust the legato and create an overlap. So let me know if that will help with your sample libraries. All right, so I just see, and this might be a follow-up to other questions. It says, I meant scaling the notes, the way you can do it in Ableton or FL. So if it's like a scale correction, so if it's not, and I think this was with our question where we showed that you could adjust the length, but there is a scale assistant here. So we can say, okay, I just wanted to make this into, you know, a D pentatonic scale, and then we could quantize the pitches to match. So if you're talking about scaling the notes, you could do like the scale assistant right here, and then you could scale and only have notes drawn in that will be, you could snap the pitch editing or show, you know, the scale note guidelines. So, or live input, and or if you wanted to also just come here, we could say show pitches only in the scale assistant as well. So as you draw notes in, it'll only, you know, we could just come over here, see all the notes, or if I only want to see notes that are available in this particular scale, we can set that up right there, and that will filter out. So as we draw notes in, we could just have the scale assistant do that. So let me know if that's what you're looking for as opposed to scaling. Okay, so to see, this might be a follow-up to a previous question. So put notes on beat 1, beat 2, and then select them both, and to be able to drag them to beat 1 and beat 3 just by dragging the piano roll. So let me just say, I'll just do this in a quick drum editor. So we could, or we said piano roll, so. Great, so I will come here and, all right, so let's say I have this set to quarter note. So I'm just gonna draw in quarter notes here. Okay. Okay, so, okay, so I guess it's maybe going on with the scaling. So put notes on beat 1 and 2, then select them both and be able to just drag it to beat 1 and beat 3 just by dragging the piano roll. So I don't think there's anything that would, you could just come over here and just, if you wanted to nudge the particular note, you could nudge quickly, but I'm not sure. So I'm not familiar with that function of just kind of stretching it. So, but or scaling as you call it. So. All right, so we have a question. Greg, please show me by an example how to make an EQ matching. Okay, so let's say find 2 different loops that sound different. Okay. So I'll just drag this out. Okay, so let's say those are different. Okay, so we have kind of more full bandwidth here. Okay, so we can come over here. Let's say I'll send both of these to a group just so we can kind of collect these. All right. All right, and let's go to the curve EQ. All right, so I think that we want to put this in. So our mode, we'll choose average. So what I want to do is, let's say we'll take this particular EQ. And once we see the frequencies kind of settle down, we'll say, let's make this a take. And let's go to this EQ. All right, so let's say, and I'll just kind of make this a little more obvious here, some EQ on this particular track. All right, so let's make this. All right, so we see kind of a different line here. Let's go to static and match, and we'll come over here to take. So what we can do is we say we want this drum to sound like this drum. So we can say we want the second recording as a reference and apply it to that one and match spectrums. So that's how you can do kind of a matching EQ using the Voxengo Curve EQ. So check that out. All right, we have Richard James checking in from a beautiful evening in France. Thanks for joining us. All right, and Richard has questions. If you create a duplicate version in order to bounce a CPU RAM intensive audio track, does the original still use the CPU in the background or only when it's in the activated version? So I think it's only in the activated version, but we can go ahead and test just to take a look. So let's say, all right, so let's say, all right, Okay, so let's say we have a number of plugins here. So let's put in so we'll put a number of references on. Okay, and let's see if we could find our CPU meter or the audio performance meter here. You just add some more. Okay, let's see if this is showing on my CPU, on my audio performance meter. Okay, so let's say as we play this, and I'll just turn the volume down because it's VST3 plugins, it may not be. Here's my new song. Don't steal it. Okay, so we do this. So let's say we duplicate. So let's say I will render in place the particular event here. Okay, and let's see, I'll do a new version here, and all right, just turn that down, but so it looks like those plugins, if we do that to, if those plugins are still active within the track version, so it looks like if you duplicate the version, if those plugins are still active, that they will still be taking CPU. But if you just did a render in place, then, that particular track, so when we come here, so let's say if we render in place and disable, so say we'll do it the channel settings, and then we choose to, and I'm going to do just the track itself. So when we go to render in place, and do render settings that we could choose to disable the source tracks. So let's say if we come here. So now as we would play back and we look at our audio performance, you can see that that's going to be much less. So, but you can't automatically render and place to a new track version. I've kind of passed that along as a feature request, but if you still have all of the processing turned on, it could still be taking all of that processing unless the processing has been disabled. So. All right, so we have a question. In Cubase Pro 12, I have an instrument track that has 6 MIDI tracks playing a different MIDI channel. I disabled the instrument track and then enabled it. The MIDI seemed to lose mapping. All right, so let's take a look, see if we could recreate that. Okay, so let's add instrument track. We'll do a Howling Sonic SE here. Okay, let's add MIDI tracks that will be then routed to that particular. So these are all now routed out to the Howling Sonic SE. Okay, so let's say if we deactivate the plugin, they're all still routed to there. Let's see if we go to our instrument rack here. And if we deactivate the instrument, they still all have the same routings there. And let me just reread it again. If I disabled the instrument track, okay, so let me just disable the instrument track here. Okay, so we will disable the selected track. Okay. And then enable the selected track. So it looks like those were all restored correctly there. So let's say, and I'll just test it. I'll just load a quick instrument sound in. So it looks like that is, let's see if the first one is, and let me just check my audio connections here real quick. So it doesn't seem like it's passing audio to the instrument, but it looks like it's passing MIDI. But let's just try this one more time and see. Oh, I have my control room down, so let's see if it's. Yeah, so the strings seem to be, that seems to work. So disabling it and then re-enabling it. So the MIDI seemed to lose mapping. So it seemed like that was all kind of working as expected there. So let me know if I did something differently than you, or if you want to test it with Howling Sonic, see if it makes a difference there. Maybe other plugins don't wake up as well. All right, so we have Dallas LaRue just saying, I have a couple of CLA plugins that have EQ, compression, reverb, and delay all in the same plugin. Would it be best to use as an insert or a send? They could be used either area. So generally, people, often don't have a reverb, like a reverb and a delay in the same send. But, the plugin probably, if we're thinking about a more traditional approach, I would say, probably sends for the reverb and delay, but you may have just kind of like a mix knob for each of those. So if it has like a mix knob for each, like for the reverb and delay, then you might, you could probably at that point choose to like a wet dry knob for each component. Then running as an insert would be fine. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to deactivate the CPU overload / audio dropout detected warning? I have to use a juggling act to cancel it while it's still playing. I think there may be like a general preference for like inhibiting like error messages, or just kind of taking error messages away. Let's see if I'm remembering correctly. All right, so I don't think it's maybe under user interface. So you see under VST, maybe if you uncheck warn on processing overloads. So go to your preferences to VST and try to see if that's checked. Try to uncheck that there and see if that makes a difference for you. So once again, preferences to VST, warn on processing overloads. So try unchecking that. All right, so we have Michael Pierce has provided his soup for the day. So green gazpacho, spinach, garlic, cucumber, DC chili, parsley, basil, mint, avocado, scallions, yogurt, sherry, vinegar, blend, taste and season, chill 3 hours. Drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. So. All right, so we see from Samson Strike just saying, hi, Greg, Spectral Layers, what are your shortcuts, tricks? So, I kind of generally will do something that's going to be more like, having it there is always really good as an available option. But when you want it to, let's say, I will just select the particular track here and let's, running it at the track level is really convenient. But, you know, check out some of the different selection types. And I'm probably not like the world's greatest spectral layers operator. But, you know, like whether you want it to be, you know, like your selection types, or if you want it to be, you know, like more of, you know, circles. And so if you wanted to lasso particular selections, I also, one of my favorite things is if you come over here, is the harmonic selection. So let's say if I select one particular range, we could select kind of the harmonic overtone series as well. So I can say, okay, like I have a squeak here, but I hear like a guitar squeak, you know, where we see not only the fundamental frequency, but the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th overtones. And at that point being able to do that. So that's one of my favorite things I like about Spectral Layers, is being able to actually deal with the overtone series correctly. So that would be a good tip. And obviously doing the removing different elements, you know, I often refer to it as taking the eggs out of the cake after it's been baked. So. All right, so we have Sesame Inc. or SESME Inc. checking in from Central Florida. Thanks for joining us. All right. So we see, why can't I bounce multiple audio clips in Cubase 12, especially stems transferred to tracks using Spectral Layers as possible in Cubase 11? So, you know, what you could do now, so let's say if I have a number of different processes here. Remember me. And I don't know. All right, and I have all these files. So what you could do now that makes it, so I still think you could select all of your events here. And if you go to audio, to extensions, and go to Spectral Layers, and you could add, you know, the various events here. So if you want to do that, but one of the things that makes it easier and faster now, if you have multiple events, is to just put it on and do the spectral and do the ARA2 functionality directly from the track. So we see no extensions. So if we've done our Spectral Layers editing here, so let's say now we double click and we could have all the events on this particular track going through the Spectral Layers. And then all you have to do is say, make all the track extensions permanent directly there from the particular inspector. So give that a shot. I think that's kind of a better way than having to add each individual event as you do it. Okay, so we see Coast Mastering, Michael Romanowski. And Michael won 3 Grammys this year. Congratulations, Michael. Very proud of you. Okay, so we see, hey, Greg, I cannot seem to get ARA options to show an EDL window. Can you show how to enable it at the top info line in Nuendo? Okay, so let's say I think it's handled the same way in Cubase, but if we come and let's see if we, so if you go to the settings here, you may have to, we can see that the extension is turned on, but it may be off screen depending on your screen resolution. So I'm going to go to setup and I'll go to my extension and I'll just move it up. So we can see the extension there. And at that point, you could choose your extension. So it could be that it's maybe just off screen a little bit. So if you go to the little settings cogwheel here and go to setup, maybe just move the extension up so that it moves over to the left and it could be visible. So let me know if that helps, Michael. All right, so we see a question. I work on a MacBook Pro with a 13-inch screen, and I can't minimize the mix console section like you have. Your Greg, it looks smaller than the main editor. How can I do it? So, you may have to adjust. So, I find it personally annoying, like on MacBook Pros, that when you go to the system preferences and you go to your display resolution, that sometimes often for like the internal display, you may not actually. So here I have it kind of for my Dell monitor that I'm using. So you may not have kind of the same screen resolution, and often in the Mac OS for the native screens, it just says kind of like big, medium, small, and it doesn't actually show you the particular resolution. And even though it's capable of running higher resolutions, it may not show you those higher resolutions. So if you wanted to actually change the resolution, so I'm running at 1080p, and I don't think I could run a 1080p resolution natively on my MacBook screen, and it's just a limitation of Apple. But there's a little preference, a little utility that you can get called like Switch ResX. So, and this will allow you often to take your internal screen resolution and set it to a particular screen resolution. And if you wanted to kind of resize, the mixer, you could just hit G and H here, but depending on the resolution, and sometimes you get not the best resolution with like a 13-inch MacBook, and it's just kind of what it is with the built-in resolution. So. All right, so we see Mark Rabin is off going camping, so have a great weekend, Mark. Thanks for joining us. All right, and we see Gareth has made the live stream. Okay, so we have a question. Could you please show me how to use the pitch switch plugin to get a chipmunk sound from a vocal? Thanks. Okay, so let's say if we have... I feel the way. All right, so let's say I'll just do this particular... I feel the way. I'll put these all next to each other here so we don't have to wait. So let's say if I wanted to do kind of chipmunky sounding vocals. I feel the way. So one of the plugins that you could use is probably like pitch shift. So it will come here. There's a pitch correct plugin. So. So if you wanted to adjust. So here you could adjust the formants. So even if you wanted to sound older. So try just, you could do kind of like extreme amounts on the formants, but I'll do it kind of in a real project here so you could hear it. I often say it's the plugin that can make, older singers sound younger and younger singers sound older. So let me just open up Beatles and Stones here, since everyone loves this project. So let me go ahead and we'll just play this.
Musical history.
So I'll go to my inserts and we'll go to the pitch correct plugin.
I've got to choose what's mine and what's yours. 'Cause now you're asking Beatles or Stones. Something about it just sounds so wrong.
Or let's say if we wanted to go.
Just leave it alone.
So you can play around with that plugin. It's a lot of fun. All right, reading through comments. All right, so we have a question. I have a pirate recording of a gig on a Sony Walkman where the battery starts to run down, so the recording speeds up. Is there a trick in Cubase to fix this? So let's say what you could do, and we've done this pretty successfully for a lot of different things where people thought it was completely a lost cause. So let's say if I have like a 2-track kind of project here. So obviously when the batteries are slowing down, it's probably the pitch, and the pitch is changing as well as the time. So if it's slowing down, it's getting longer in time. If it's so we need to kind of correct that. So when we come here, we could switch the algorithm for the particular file here, and so we could do it directly from our top line here, and I'll just move the algorithm over since move this up. All right, so we're going to set this to tape. So, and let's say as we're playing this, we could add a tempo track. So let's say we get so now as I would put in a slower tempo, what's going to happen is the pitch of the recording, if it's in just going to put this into musical mode. Just move this up now. All right, so now we're going to take the audio file and place it into musical mode. So as we change the tempo here, it's going to automatically. So probably what you need to do is just to kind of come and find, like, so it's probably that as the batteries are wearing out, it was slowing down. So probably what you need to do is just to take this, and this will stretch the audio, speed up the audio, and change the pitch just like an analog tape machine. So if we wanted to compensate, like as it is kind of drifting. So as it goes to a faster tempo now, it's going to change the pitch. So you may just have to, like, over time as the battery kind of, degrades, say, okay, I just need this mode. I need it here, and gradually increase the pitch and the tempo. Just, or increase the tempo, and that will increase the pitch and the speed to kind of match the original tempo. So it's not going to automatically do that. You'll have to kind of do it by ear, but place the track into musical mode. And then for its algorithm, and you could also just do this in the pool window as well. And for its algorithm, you want to set it to tape. Then as you adjust the tempo, the pitch will change to offset the slowing down of the motors during the recording. So. All right, so you see comment from Gareth, who says, I think fake is the only thing left for bass for the Hot Mess project. So I have I still have about 4 more measures of the bass solo in the Mangini, that song with the bass solo. So, so working on that. So I got most of it done. So I should have that to you in the next day or two, and work on the fake. All right. All right, so we see Samson Strikes just saying greetings and respect to Werner. For the interactive phrase synthesizer. Yeah, I think his name was actually on the very first Cubase about screen. So he's been, I think it's Steinberg since 84, 85. So wonderful guy. And Spike, now that you told us what the pirate recording of a gig was, you have to tell us the artist now. So. All right, we see Captain Energy Music on the live stream. Thanks for joining, being part of the community today. All right, we see Pablo's playing Wembley Stadium tonight. Wow, we're lucky. He should still make the live stream. All right. Just kidding. All right, so we have a question. Is there any way to use a mix console just for the Q mixes without interfering with my mix? Any tips how to take advantage of the 4 mix consoles in Cubase Pro? So if we want to set up Q mixes without affecting the mix that's in the control room, we could do that using, so let's take a look at that. So using the control room for that. So we'll go to this project here quickly. So let's say we're doing like a live band recording. And we have, I know you're looking good. Drums, bass, guitar, all right, and vocals. All right, so what I'm going to do is go to the full screen mix console. In the racks, we want to make sure that we have Q sends turned on. I'm going to now take all of the Q sends here. I'm going to select all the tracks in the project. So we'll just come, select all the tracks, hold down the shift key, select the first track, hold down the shift key, select the last track. We'll right click in the control room and you'll see all Qs. So let's use, first we're going to activate all the Q sends. Okay. And then we want to use kind of as the basis, if you want to save some time, we could translate the current mix levels over for all of the musicians. Okay, and I want to use the current pan settings. Okay, so now when we come over here in our control room, we've in audio connections, we've created different cue mixes. So let's say we can right click and then we can say, okay, we're going to add a cue. So say I have like drums, bass, guitar, and we'll call this one vocals. Okay, so the trick is I'm going to activate cue link. So I'm going to take all of my drums here and I'm going to send more of the drums to the drummer's headphone mix. Let's take the bass, send more of the bass to the bass player's headphone mix, and let's do our guitars. And we will do the same thing for our guitar parts. We're going to send the guitar more to the guitar headphone mix. So how we can switch to audition these. So the idea is we send these to different outputs. Each of these cue mixes to different outputs that can feed either a headphone output on your audio interface or into a headphone amp system. So I don't want to affect my mix here, but if I wanted to now listen to like my different cue mixes, I can say, okay, let's listen to, here's the drummer's cue mix. There's the bass player's cue mix. And let's come over here and listen to the guitars. And let's say the bass player's like, oh, I need more kick drum in my headphones. I would just go to the kick drum here and send that more to the bass. So I can just say, let's take all the kick. So we go to our drummer's mix. I would say the drummer wants to hear more bass, so we send our bass track to the drummer's headphone mix. And let's say they hate the guitar player, so we can say, okay, I don't want, when we're listening to we can take our guitar tracks. So but we still have our original mix here. Drummers mix, bass players. So that's how you could set up different cue mixes just right there. So that way your original mix is fine. If someone is totally annoying you and say, oh, it's like, put the headphones on, you can listen to this. Oh, are you happy with the mix now? And then leave your mix completely intact if you want to. All right, so the second question was, why use, let me just read it. So how to take advantage of the 4 mix consoles. So what a lot of people will do is, mix console 1 may be only inputs, or let's say I go to mix console 2, I only want to see inputs on this particular mixer. So if I'm tracking live, I may want to have different configurations, or I could say, okay, I only want to see my input channels here, or I only want to see groups, VCAs, and effects channels. I only want to see inputs or outputs. I just want to see virtual instruments in this mixer. So we could have the different mixers show you different types of data. So that's why people would use 4 mix consoles. This is all my audio. This is all my virtual instruments. These are all my effects groups. These are all my inputs. And you can hit one button without having to do lots of configurations within one single mix. All right, great to see Marcos Gomez from Brazil on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question. Greg, a cohort of mine was asking if you could edit video and export it from Cubase Pro. My thought was no, but I thought I would ask for clarification. Check I'm not going crazy. So you can do some like really rudimentary editing. So let's say if we're here, we'll do new project. If we import a video file, all right, so let's say at this point I wanted to, get rid of all of this. So I'll just hit, all right, so I just did my video there. Then, so we can like cut, right? It's really intended like, okay, we have a picture change, we need to cut. And then you could export the video with the cuts. Now, Cubase is not intended to be a video editor, but if you have mixed a concert to video, you have created all sorts of, you've done a huge film composition and they've now taken out 3 seconds from one scene, that you could deliver the content with a video edit. It's not going to do color correction or dissolves or different transitions, but you can do like really basic editing. You could probably do more video editing in, dedicated, even a free tool, but you can do some like really basic editing inside of Cubase. All right. Go through some more comments. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And so you could get notified for more of these. All right. Okay, so I have a question. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to know where did my samples, audio files come from once they're copied into my Cubase project folders? Because after that, Media Pool only shows Cubase folders as their location. So once it's, it's going to show there is a preference. Like if, for some reason you wanted to see where once it's in Cubase, it's not going to reference where it came from. But if you don't want it to, if you don't want it to automatically copy into the project folder, I think as we come to editing audio, you could say on import audio files, you could just say, you could uncheck copy all files to project folder, and then that would retain it in its original spot. Generally most people want to have it in a unified folder, especially when you're backing up and archiving projects. But if you didn't want that, but once that preference is set, there's no way, just like a copied file, like if I'm copying like a text document, it doesn't show me a whole history of where the file was copied from. There may be some way of doing it, but generally in most operating systems, I don't do that. But if you wanted to know the exact location and, you could have it retain, you could have, as you copy a file in, that the files would retain its original space if this is unchecked. Okay, so we just see, is there a way or plugin in Cubase 12 to detect and correct phase issues in audio tracks? So if you do have phase issues, there is a plugin called Supervision, which will have like a phase scope. So if you wanted to come here, let's just say I wanted to, there's going to be phase scopes that would indicate if, particular files are out of phase. And then if you need to, so we could visually see that within kind of a phase scope. Let's see if I could show it quickly here. Okay, so let's say if we're playing our 2 tracks here. Okay, I'll just check. Okay, so let's say we're playing. All right, so I'll just come here. Let's make this into our phase scope. So let's say if I wanted to take one of the tracks and kind of flip the phase on it. And let me just tell it not to follow the tempo changes there. So I'm going to select this file and we'll just flip the phase. So we could see that this goes, very horizontal when we have phase issues, and we could just kind of flip the phase right there. So that's a pretty good indication that you're going to have phasing issues. We see that. Now you could also add other modules. So let's say for this one, we could see kind of our phase panorama. There's also kind of multi-correlation where you can see which frequencies will kind of go out of phase. Then you got phase correlation as well as like the phase balance between them. So you can kind of flip the phase. You could invert it directly on the project window here. There's, I think, an audio menu. You could invert phase on and off, or you could just do it in the sample editor or as part of the direct offline processing. So it doesn't automatically determine the phase, because sometimes people like stuff out of phase for particular effects. But you could find it pretty quickly using like the supervision meters to determine the phase. All right, so we see a question from Andy. It says, hi, Greg, Cubase 11 bug, remote control, preset control room, speaker solo rear doesn't turn off when activated. This is not the case with the other control room speaker commands. Let's see if I can take a look at it here. Let me just create a 5.1 out. All right, and let me just... All right, so let me get it set up in the control room. All right, so let's go to generic remote. I'll just... Okay, so we'll come over here to VST control room, see if we can do it here. Okay, let me just make sure I have the right one. Okay, so let's say. Okay, so it doesn't turn off when activated. So let me just see if we get this set up so we see that it's kind of turned on. All right, so let me just... Yeah, so I see where it looks like it's... Yeah, I'll just try one more time. All right, and so get that. It looks like it's doesn't turn off. I can see because it's actually do that. And let me see if there's another. So you might have to just set another function as a speaker solo cancel because you're telling it to be on. So let's say if we come here to control room, and I will set note off message here. So let's say I get, let me just learn a MIDI note here, MIDI message. Okay. And we'll say control room, and we'll say speaker solo cancel. So now I could cancel the speaker solo. So, you know, you're telling it to solo, but, you know, there's the cancel function that you could use. So when I hit the other MIDI note to cancel the speaker solo. So maybe if you set up another function for the speaker cancel solo, that will do the trick for you. Okay, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. So okay, so I see from Samson Strike, just are there any channels to work on game sound, ambisonics, Atmos? So I'm not sure if you're looking to do, you know, because we could add ambisonics tracks, and obviously in Cubase 12, Nuendo 11, Nuendo 12. So like when we start dealing with our channel configurations, you know, we could choose different, you know, up to third order ambisonics we could handle here. But let me know if you're looking for like maybe a channel of tutorials or just audio channels. So we see from Andy, question, is there a way to freeze multiple tracks using a key shortcut or macro? So now, just jump back to another project here. And let me just adjust my outputs. Okay, so now if you wanted to just select multiple tracks, and this came in 12.01, that if we just go to the project, that you can now freeze, unfreeze multiple tracks. Maybe it's under edit. Yeah, so you could just freeze or unfreeze selected tracks or tracks with the current setting. So yeah, that came in 12.01. So you can do that, and there's key commands for that as well. See Gareth just saying big hand for Jazz Dude and all his Discord work. So yeah, definitely worthy of all the kudos and thanks for that. It's a wonderful resource for people. All right, we have Jeff Zabelski from Chico, California. Thanks for joining us. It's great to see you on the Zoom meetup last week. All right, so we have a question. So is the M Audio Axiom 61 listed in the Cubase Pro 12 remote control, and can I use it directly without configuration? So it's not a control that's automatically detected, so you would just need to do configuration on it, but it's pretty easy to do. You can probably get it. It's one of those things you put off doing for for 20 days, and it takes you 15 minutes to actually do. So okay, we have a question. Can you demonstrate how to render in place in real-time analog capture of multiple tracks replaced in the EDL? So, all right. So if it has, I don't have an external device captured here, but let's just say, just jump to a different project. So let's say if I wanted to take all of my drums here. So let's say if I had these sent to a group channel. Okay, let me activate this project. All right, so we'll just call this our drum group. And I'm going to add a stereo audio track, and we could do this for multiple tracks or just one. I'm going to set its input from our drum group, and we'll hit OK. So as we play, and we have this in record, and let me just set my control room so we can hear. So as I hit record here, all my drums can now be so if we wanted to listen to this now, we can see all of my drums that were sent into the drum group can now be just kind of captured. And if that's going to various outboard gear, we could do that. If you have outboard gear connected and configured as an external effect when you render in place, that would do it in real time as well. So I don't have any external gear. I just have a simple 2-in, 2-out interface. But anytime that you would have anything that would require real time, such as I'm going out to this processor, if that's configured as an external effect in the audio connections, at that point, when you render in place, the rendering would include the external processing. And since it has to play that to generate the sounds, at that point, it would automatically render in place in real time. And if you're doing it from the track, you could have your render setting set to, when we go to render in place, you get to your render settings. If you have the track selected as opposed to an event, so let me just not have the event selected, we could now come over here to the render in place, and you could choose to, for the source events, let's have another track selected or something. So. But at that point in the source events, you could choose to disable the source tracks or remove the source tracks. reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. Let's see how we're doing on time. So we're doing pretty well. Okay, so we see how to create a custom drum map in Groove Agent and having it routed to separate tracks. Okay, so let's say, I think I have a Groove Agent in here. So let me just open it. So let's say I'm going to right click and we'll cut all the kits. So I want to, let's go to some samples. Okay, so let's say I want it kick drum. Okay, so I want that kick drum. All right, so let's say I want to put a snare. And let's put another snare here, and let's say a hi-hat. Okay, so now, okay, so I click here, and now we will see, once we have the pad selected, I'm going to go to my mix console, and right now we have everything going out of one stereo out right here. So all I need to do is to select the pad and say, okay, we're going to send this to output 2. So now I select this, we're going to send this, and we have 32 stereo outputs. I'm going to send this to output 4 and my hi-hat to output 5. So now if we look at our mixer here, and that's all you have to do. So select the pad, and then on the instrument tab, when you go to edit to main, you could just see your output defined right there. All right. So as you just see, I'm hoping we get some Pro Tools users over after their bad decision to go subscription-based. If Steinberg was smart, they seized the opportunity to reach out to customers and grab them. So you may have noticed that, within a week of that, there is a competitive upgrade promotion currently going on. It started yesterday. So we've had a lot of people switching. So it's been great. We'll have to send them a thank you note. All right, we see Jazz Dude proactively doing some moderation. Thank you for that. Sorry that you have to do that. All right, you see Michael Pierce is logged out to meet up with a student, so hopefully we'll catch you by the end of the live stream. All right. Hi, Greg. Can you test the pan law in Cubase 12, how the back vocal works under the main vocal for or ever instruments that we can make the equal, and what's the proper RMS for background vocals in Cubase 12? You know, with any song, there's no proper, levels for background vocals. With the pan law, you're going to be able to manipulate. So we go to your project setup. We can set the pan law here so that as we pan, hard left, hard right, and as we combine two signals, so if we have a stereo file and, if we have a left channel and a right channel, and as we, add two sources, that doubles the volume, that's 3 dB. So, people can use this to manipulate, to make mixes sound wider. So it's kind of a common tool. I think a lot of kind of large format analog consoles will do like minus 4.5 dB for your pan law. And this just kind of compensates so that as you're panning, if you wanted it to kind of go down as you pan farther out, or if you wanted this source to get a little bit louder, or if you want it to be uniform as you pan across. So it's really, every song is going to be a different set, a different requirement. So there's no right answer for where should this be set. And I know it's sometimes easy to look for those solutions, like, oh, whenever I use this for every time I run into this situation. But every song is going to present unique situations. So, and I think, if you're looking often for I get the question, how do I set up, for vocals, and then every song could require different things depending on the microphone, the singer, the room, the song itself. So. All right. See, Jeff Sabelski's passing on his 3 Grammy kudos to Michael Romanowski from Coast Mastering. All right, so we see a suggestion box. Add to the control panel, I guess the control room, a way to add a sub button to my monitor so that I could hit a button with crossover filter all set up in the audio panel and toggle off and on with multi-speakers. So, and there's different schools of thought on that, whether the speakers themselves, if the subwoofer has the built-in crossover and how to manage that. So I think most people would, if they're working with subs, will have the crossover kind of automatically set on the speakers themselves. But I'll pass it along as a suggestion. It'd be nice to have maybe a 2.1 monitoring setup as well. So. All right. Right, sorry, my chat field jumped on me. Let me just find my spot. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, so I think I'm back to roughly where I was. Okay, so we have a question. Recently got a fader, but whenever I record using the fader upon playback, all my levels in which I used a fader on go to 0, and I have to manually rise them again. Any clue why? So not sure which fader you got, but it could be. So let's say if we have, right. All right, see if I could figure this out. Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's. I see someone else asking if it's a fader port. Okay, so sometimes when you're working with this, let's say we have like the drums on this particular track. So we have drums, and let's say if I like, I'm just gonna write some automation here. So okay, and let me see. All right, so so when I come here, you know, it could be that maybe like your fader was down, and maybe you wrote automation at the very beginning, and it was something like this. So now when we look at the fader, you could see that, but I don't know what kind of fader it is, if it's a MIDI fader or fader port. But make sure that you actually have, you know, automation points. And some people will just quickly, you know, write an automation point at the beginning and at the end, so that as they're doing like a little bump automation point, that you could just simply kind of have a return value. But if you could let us know what type of fader you're using, or if it's the software fader. But anything that you do here, you could just grab while you're automating. So just click on the W button and once we have values in, they could be automated. But if you could let us know what fader it is, that would be great. See some discussion of the Yamaha CS80, the highly coveted. I think Steinberg has one in their office. Someone donated to them. So, okay, so we just see, yeah, the one I use for expression that I plug directly in by USB. Okay, so I think this is with the fader. So recording upon playback, all my levels in which I use the fader go to 0, and I have to manually raise them again. So I'm not sure if you're writing MIDI CC data or if you're controlling automation. So if you could let us know if it's like MIDI volume or if it's automation that's tied to the mix console, that would be helpful. It's from Ryan Manuel Reyes. All right, so we're seeing discussion of the synthesizer used in Close Encounters. So I think it was actually Michael Boddicker. He told me once that I think he was the guy who set up the whole synth for them. All right, so we see from Michael Romanowski that his extensions was off screen, and he got 2 of his Grammys were for mastering Best Immersive using Nuendo as his DAW. So. And Wavelab for Best Engineering Classical. So, yeah, I was so happy to see your recognition finally for you being recognized for all your wonderful work for the audio community and just your wonderful catalog of projects, Michael. So. All right, we have a question. Hi, Greg. Do you know how we can pin a couple of faders in the mixer on the right near the stereo output? All right, so let's say I want to take like a couple of drum tracks. So what we could do is from the visibility inspector, we have these things called zones. So we're going to click in the inspector, click on visibility, and then in the bottom, not on track, but in zones. And we have 3 different zones where we could have mixers, we could have faders kind of pinned to the left or right. So if I wanted to take, let's say, my bass and guitars, I could pin those over to the right-hand side. And a lot of times people will take their master output and pin it there. So now as we scroll in the mixer, I'll just make the mixer larger here, that we could just come right over here and those channels will stay. And let me just add a whole bunch of channels real quick just to illustrate this. So as we scroll the mixer, we could scroll all these channels and these will be kind of anchored to the left or right. So you can kind of have a 3-zone console. So once again, go to in the inspector, click on visibility and then click on zones. And then we could just choose to anchor those in the center zone or put them in the right zone so that they're always fixed in that particular spot. So you can do that for as many tracks. Some people run into the issue of, pinning. I one customer that would pin 40 tracks to the right zone and realize, it's like, it's not working. So obviously you have to have like a limited number of, channels over there, but you could do that just by using the zones in Cubase. Okay, so question, can you add a VCA fader to multiple tracks at once? So really all you have to do is select your tracks here. So we have all these tracks and then right click, add track and VCA fader to selected channels. So now this is all of our VCAs are now controlling all of our drums right there. So select the channels, right click, add track, and you'll see VCA fader to selected channels. And that's how you do it very easily. So you see just from Cubase Junkie saying, I think the Kraftwerk group that Jazz told me about used to use the CS80 at times, that group that Daft Punk was inspired by. So yeah. All right, and we have David Griffiths checking in from Wales. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so just see any chance that MCC data might get added to MIDI remote? My Arturia Keylab 49 Mark II seems like $60 wasted at the moment. So is MCC, maybe David Griffiths, if you could let me know if MCC is Mackie control or what MCC is. But if it is for Mackie control, Mackie controls its kind of own unique protocol, but you should be able to disable that. But you can still use Mackie control. But if you could just specify what MCC is for me, for my benefit. Sorry if I'm being dense. All right, so we see Gerald Ely's stepping out for a dental appointment. Thanks for joining us. See, Spike Williams says, awesome, Greg. I've waited 40 years for that answer. Now, if I could only remember your question. So, but I'm glad it's helpful. So, all right. So we just see, will you please demonstrate the multi-panner that comes in Cubase Pro 12? Okay, so let's come over here to a new project. All right, and I'll add, let's say, a 5.1 out. make a 5.1 channel and see if I stop my 5.1 out. Here we'll even do a 7.1.4. Why not? Live on the edge. Okay, so now okay, so we're going to have our panner set up here. So this is, we can think of this as the top view. So how it's going to look if we were just looking at it like bird's eye view. And then, you know, we're going to have different options where you could adjust the positioning, you know, on the X axis, the Y axis, front to back, or Z. So you could just kind of come right over here. You could rotate the different components. And here what we see is kind of more of the three-dimensional, like we're looking at the rear view. So as we wanted to rotate or send, you know, we could do tilts on your Y, X, and Z coordinates. And then, you know, the overall level, if you need to adjust that, height and depth, width. So you could just, again, kind of see the different changes as we go on. Now, a lot of times people may go, oh, they don't see kind of the rear view, and that's when you just kind of click right there. So this is obviously ideal for doing Atmos productions, so, and different immersive functions and panning. All right, so we have Keith Young. Great to see you on the live stream. How do you get a curve in the automation lane? Okay, so let's say I have an automation lane here, and I'm just going to, let's say I add a couple points here. I'm going to tilt this up. So let's say, and we'll tilt this down. All right, so as soon as I want to, you know, if we have, and I'll just start from scratch here. So let's say, okay, I want to take this, and so we have, let's say, just a straight curve. So once we have 2 points as a curve, we see this little line, and this will allow us to do different Bezier curves, just like so. So we could just kind of come right over here and do different ramps and all that great stuff right there. So as soon as you have any 2 points, so let's say I have these, you could go right to the middle between those 2 points and be able to adjust the curve accordingly between 2 existing points. So if I say, okay, let's adjust this, then you could just kind of move it free form like so. All right. So Gareth wants everyone to hit the like button. So great to see Cubase Junkie on the live stream. Okay, so we just see, Greg, if a project has many recorded tracks in mono, then other tracks added with Iconica instruments, for example, that are in stereo, what's the best way to make them mono to match the others for panning? So a lot of times when you're working with like an iconic instrument, realize that, you know, sometimes making it mono may not be what you want, because if you're doing, you know, like many of the samples are going to be captured with multiple microphones, like room mics and ambient mics, and those will often be in stereo. So if you make it mono, you may lose some of the capabilities of that. So, you know, you could freely mix mono and stereo tracks together. But let's see if we come over here. Just open up the big gun here. All right, so, you know, even if we come here, let's say we're, you know, when we go to actually look at, you know, so, you know, often we could see kind of within the stereo spectrum where this is set. But if you wanted to just, you know, you could have like the close mic or the decatry, or, you know, if you, depending on the different sources, you could bring these in. But these often what kind of makes the sound for the orchestral library is going to be, you know, that it is stereo and that the room has been captured as part of the samples. So, but if you wanted to, at that point, you know, just be able to pan, you know, to adjust the panning, just, you could put it into a combined panner, and you could make it kind of more mono and shift that around on the instrument track itself. All right, and Michael Romanowski also, this is amazing, got used Nuendo to master all the immersive Dune soundtrack releases, which won Oscar for Best Soundtrack. So that's great. I didn't know you were involved with the Dune releases, so congratulations. Michael's having a good year, so, but well-deserved. So we had a lot of work on Dune done in Steinberg software. All right, so to see, explain how to use the listen key when working in the full screen key editor. So let's go back to our Beatles and Stones project. Okay, so it's a, all right, so I think I have a macro for this. So let's say if I'm here, and I like the song too much to leave that pitch correction plugin on. All right.
We played our records into the night.
All right, let me just.
I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. Up until now, that was okay.
I'm just gonna revert this quickly here.
Our musical history.
Okay, so let's say we're in full screen.
What's mine and what's yours?
So let's try this macro. right, so just gonna look at the macro here real quick. So when we come, let's go to our key commands. I think it's just listen from key editor. So it's going to be just, and let's see if I have this.
Until now, that was okay. Guess all along I was so naive.
So it might have to be with instrument tracks. Let me just see if I do that with an instrument track. So, and I know I've seen kind of discussions online that it's, when you're in the key editor, there's going to be, different functions will have a window focus. So what we're doing in the background is switching to the mix console, then activate the listen mode, and then turn that off really quickly. So we could just kind of do it like that. So. Okay, so we see how to do transient shaping in Cubase. All right, so we'll take just our drums here. So, we had one of the first, it's plugin called Envelope Shaper. So we'll come right over here to Dynamics, to the Envelope Shaper. So if I want to take my drums, really tight, short drums. So you can adjust the attack, the length, and release right there. So. All right, so just see this is with the fader. It says, I mainly use Spitfire for my orchestral, and the controller I bought is actually wired to control volume and expression. Works fine until I scroll back a few bars and it goes to 0. So if, it depends if you're recording MIDI CC data or automation. So if you're recording MIDI CC data, probably check when you go back to editing and maybe under MIDI. There's like, or we go to MIDI here. Maybe you could uncheck reset on stop. But if you have those events, you could also try adjusting the chase events. But sometimes those will write MIDI CC data directly into the event, or if you're trying to record automation, which could be different. So, but if you're recording it in data and then when you go back, it may reset it on stop for your MIDI CC data. So, but also you could just, make sure that you have the actual MIDI CC data value there, so that as soon as you go back to the beginning, that it starts to play, and that MIDI CC, because that will kind of, if it's resetting, it's going to wait until it sees some more MIDI CC data for it to work. All right, so just see Chris King just says, I wish I have a key set to turn listen on and off on a track, works in the project window, but not when full screen editor is open. Wish they'd fix it. So again, the listen bus is going to be for, certain functions in the program are active depending on the active window. So, as you work with that, it's just like, you may not want to quantize within the mix console editor, or do MIDI transpositions there. So, certain functions, I've passed on your feature suggestion in the past, so we'll see if it gets implemented. But, right, that the listen function works, but, you may not be able to trigger it from within the key editor if that's the active window. So. All right, Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. All right, reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg from Brazil. What about sync time code with video in the beginning of the timeline, not in the beginning of the timeline, but ahead some bars? Thanks. Okay. Okay, so let me see if I could recreate this. Just import a video file real quickly. Okay, and I'm just go to my video player. Okay, so let's say if we have time code here. Okay, what about sync time code with the video to the beginning of the timeline, not in the beginning of the timeline, but ahead some bars? Thanks. So if you want this, so let's say if we have kind of our offsets here. So you might just have to, so let's say if we have this and let's say we have our time code, so probably what you need to do is just to do offsets here. So let's say we want our project start time at 3 seconds, and then you could choose to move. So we could say now we're going to start at 3 seconds. So we could just do different offsets, or if you needed to add time before, you could do different project start times and display time offsets and display bar offsets there. So let me know if that's helpful. But or if not, if maybe you could rephrase the question. And I realize that I don't speak Portuguese, as so sorry about that. Okay, so just see a question. How do you handle your Windows on Windows desktops in Cubase? So it's really pretty similar. So I'm not sure, like if you want to have like predetermined, views for, you could save workspaces and be able to work with that, but I'm not sure if I'm probably misunderstanding your question. Sorry about that. All right, so we see a question or a comment from Soren. Just says, I bought an audio to MIDI plug just before Cubase 12 came out with that function. $30 down the drain. Can Steinberg become leaner and reveal features in the future? Sometimes if we, I don't think we'll see a lot of that going on, and it's not that we're hiding stuff from customers, but you realize that it is a very competitive marketplace, and if you announce features ahead of time, it allows competition to try to implement those features. So and then sometimes features may disappear at the last minute too. So all right, reading through comments. All right, so we have a question. I set my mixing console view using the 4 available. Now I lost the ability of switching back and forth from my project window using F3. How to fix this? So I think it's really whatever. I think F3 is designed to always bring like the primary windows back, but I think you just need to assign key commands. So let's say if we come over here to mix consoles, or into the mixer. Or it's going to be under devices, I think. Sorry. All right, so let's say mix console 2. I will do Shift plus F3. So I could have this. So it's kind of, let's say if I hit Shift F3, that will, the same keyboard shortcut that you use to open the mix console that's been assigned will close the mix console as well. So just go to under devices and set up your different keyboard shortcuts, because F3 just opens up the primary mix console, and then the other ones can just, you can at that point just choose to, to set up your own keyboard shortcuts, and those same keyboard shortcuts will open and close the particular mix console view. All right, reading through comments. So we see jazz harmony discussions. All right, reading through comments. All right, we see James Harris. He used to go to the Club Cubase in Chicago. Yeah, I miss Greg Crook a lot. Glad you could join us today. All right, so to see Greg, Justin is revealing that he's sitting and testing next version of Wavelab Beta now. Will you also reveal when you work with the Cubase 13 before release? So no, that's kind of a, I don't think, I think part of the beta process is, you're not supposed to talk about it. So probably not. So otherwise I'll have a lot of Northern Germans really mad at me. So. Okay. Okay, lots of great discussion on jazz harmony and chords. All right, great to see Mike Rivera on the live stream. All right, my chat field just jumped on me, so. Trying to find my spot. I see I have lots of questions in my future. Okay, so we have a question from Kevin Mehmed. What is your favorite piece of external device to use in Cubase? What are your favorite brand of headphones? So what I've used for all my live streams, and so I often have them on for 6 or 7 hours a day. I have Yamaha I think it's the MPH8, or it's like an MT MPH8 headphones. I think they usually sell for around $200. That's what I use for all of my live streams and all of my conference calls that I do and Zoom calls and stuff like that. All right, so we see a feature request from Gareth on per channel pan law settings would be a big help. So yeah, nothing could ever go wrong with that. So we would get a lot of calls. Why does this sound differently on this track? So, but I'll pass it along. Right, still reading through comments here. All right, so we have a question. How do you route your tracks? So depending on what is defined in your connections here, you could just come over and say, okay, we have audio connections. So let's say if, we have group channels, we could add a group channel. We have outputs. And let's say if we have effects channels. So at this point, we can route a particular audio track to, particular output source here. So if we wanted to send it to this stereo output, we could also use sends if we want to send it to outputs here. So if we say, okay, I want this to go out of stereo out 2, but I also want this to go out of this group and send it to my delay bus as well. So this way we could send out to multiple destinations right there as well. Okay, so we have a question, how to create a template where the instruments are ready, loaded for a new project with color coding, groups, and order. So as soon as, let's say, we have a project loaded here. So say, okay, I have a video track, I have audio. Let's say I've now added a number of instrument tracks. So let's say, okay, we're gonna add some retro logs. I want to add Hallian Sonic. SE. So let's add 2 of those. I want to add, a reverb and a delay. All right, so once we kind of have, let's say, okay, now I wanted to colorize these channels appropriately. So once I have everything kind of set up and configured, really, all you need to do. Okay, so let's say we'll colorize those tracks here. Let's select these. We'll make them kind of blue. So once you have everything set up exactly as you like, at that point, all you have to do is save as template, give it a name, and then when you go to a new project, you would see your template show up under more. And then, so once everything is kind of set up the way you want, at that point, save as a template. Okay, so we have a question. Is SQL 3 included with Cubase Pro 12, or do you have to buy it if it's under complementary products? Clarify if it's free. So it's not complementary, it's complementary, meaning that it's a program that works, it's not free. It's a program that could supplement the particular use of other programs, so it's not free with Cubase. It's a separate program. So there's complementary with an E after the L and complementary. So see, Gareth is saying Atmos is his next mission. So. And Gareth wants me to stop playing with balloons. I get paid for it. It's my job. So. All right, Nexus wants everyone to hit the like button because Cubase is the best DAW out there. Thanks. All right, just finding my spot. My timeline jumped on me. All right, just trying to find my spot. Sorry, just trying to find where I was. Okay, so I think I'm pretty close. All right. All right, so it says, Greg, in I/O dialog with the 32 in-out device, is it best to set up 16 stereo buses, which I'll be able to use left, right, or do I need mono path, or should I set up both 16 stereo and 32 mono buses? If it's, for the most flexibility, I would just set up probably, 16 stereo and 32 mono, or you could have, you could alternate them if you wanted to. So it really kind of depends what type of work you're doing. So if you find that you're always recording stereo tracks or you're doing everything in mono, then you could choose to do both, but there's no consequence to having both the stereo and mono tracks configured all at once if you don't want to change it. Okay, just reading through. Lots of great discussion today. Okay, so you see, Greg, might Steinberg be so kind as to add MIDI controls for two non-standard layout controllers due to their atypical designs, expressive ease, Touche and Neova's Enhancia? I'm not sure how. If as long as it's kind of transmitting, different MIDI messages, I'll take a look at those. If you want to email me after the live stream, so I don't have to search. But as long as it's transmitting, MIDI messages, the Cubase should be able to have, different controls that could work with it. All right, still reading through comments. Apparently I broke Gareth's Cubase balcony window. So if you put 12 reference reverbs as inserts. So we see Gareth saying the envelope shaper is the revelation of the day. Didn't know about that dang plugin. So that's a great one. So definitely play with that. It's kind of the anti-suck plugin for drums. All right. Great to see Randy Lee from Texas on the live stream. And Spike Williams also saying envelope shaper. How did I miss it? So helpful. All right, so just see, Greg, any thoughts being able to color code the tracks on the VSTI column? It would make finding certain tracks so much easier. So I guess if it's over here, but realize that when we do these, that, if we're coloring here, we may have one Hallian Sonic track that may have multiple tracks going to it. And, some people, like I remember when we were doing a video with the guys from Infected Mushroom, like kick is always this color, bass is always this color. But if it's coming from the same instrument that's one color and you have multiple tracks feeding into it, you may not want that to be the same color. So since these don't have colors, the tracks themselves have the colors, and it could be it could throw off a lot of people, and you may not want to see all the different colors here. But I'll regardless, I'll pass it along as a feature request. Let's see. Spike Williams says smashing the like button sounds a bit aggressive. The like button should be touched gently and only once, or at least an odd number of times. All right, it says, I just got here. I may have missed this, but any idea when the maintenance update will be coming out for 12? So, there was a 12.02 just released last week. So check that out if you're not running that. We see Jazz Dude just mentioning Cubase's DAW where 90% of the users know maximum 50% of its features. That's why there's so much confusion in all the YouTube comments of like Dom's videos. I didn't know Cubase could do this. It's kept me employed for 30 years, so it's good. People not reading manuals. All right, so I just see from Cubase Junkie, I wish one day I can visit the Steinberg headquarters. Yeah, so it's a cool building. You could probably see in the video that I had up. That's the Steinberg building kind of in downtown Hamburger by Berliner Tor metro stop. I think it used to be the old police station in Hamburg. I haven't been, and I was supposed to go like the week before everything shut down for COVID, but I haven't been in like almost 4 years or so I miss going there. All right, you see Graham Witcher has joined as well. So we just see about the video offset. Thanks, Greg. Greg, use offset to put video ahead, right? So you could do it either direction. All right, so you see, Greg, what's your empty-ons about the sound of Brit Master Servants by Depeche Mode? So I haven't really listened. This probably sounds sacrilegious, but I haven't really listened to a lot of Depeche Mode. So growing up, I was more, as a bassist, I was more into guitar bands than synth bands. But I'll go listen to it this weekend. All right, we see from Nathan Drew, these Club Cubase streams are so great. Thank you all for doing them. So we're glad that they're helpful. Otherwise, I spend a lot of time on doing something. So. All right, still reading through comments. Lots of great discussions. See, Jazz Dude shared a discussion about the new concert hall in Hamburg, which is amazing. I haven't seen the actual concert hall, but I've been on the roof, and it's beautiful architecturally. All right, so we see from Keith Young, Greg, could you just run through downloading the upgrade from 11 to 12? What's my dongle doing when this is going on? So your license on your dongle from Cubase 11 is going to turn from a Cubase 11 license that could be upgraded to a Cubase 11 license non-upgradable, so that that way you can't update to Cubase 12 again at a discounted rate. So once you do that, So, but, and then once that, so it's going to kind of migrate it to a non-upgradable license. And then from that point, it'll look to verify your license, I believe. And then it can activate the Cubase 12 license on your computer using the Steinberg activation manager. And we have a question. I understand the new virtual piano is 8 gigs RAM. Can I exclude this? So yeah, you can definitely exclude it. So if you just go to like the Steinberg download manager, as we look at it, or the Steinberg download assistant rather. So library manager and download assistant. Sometimes get that mixed up towards the end of a long live stream. All right, so we'll get the download assistant open. So I just won't do that now. But as you look at your Cubase 12, it'll indicate which different functions are optional. So when we come here to Cubase, so we come right over here, you can see that as we do the Verve piano, that, all of these will say content set optional. So even if and I think like you might be doing cruise ship gigs, and if you don't want to download it now, that you could download it afterwards at any time. So it's just so you see Verve and it's optional. So you could download it if you want, but you don't have to take advantage of all the Cubase stuff that's new in 12. All right, so we see Gareth is probably checking out for late dinner or to go to bed because it's late in Spain. So we have a question. Is there a way to store colors for tracks type by default, or do I need to configure each time I create a project or template? So if you are starting a template, the colors will be stored within the template. If you wanted to come over and do stuff like, okay, I want to take, we could use the project logical editor. So we could say, okay, let's say I have a track called bass. We could do stuff like, okay, I want to say we'll take a media type equals audio or instrument or MIDI. And we could say set color. And let's say that name contains bass. Okay, so and at this point we could say set to fixed value, and I want it to be to this color. So anytime that we have a track that's named bass, we could automatically change the color. So if you wanted to do that, now that could take longer to set up than to just select these tracks and go to the color tool, say I want them all red or yellow or whatever color you want. So so it doesn't take long. So it's going to be stored on a project by project basis, or if you have the color configuration stored in your template, which a lot of people do, that will automatically be preserved anytime you start a project from that template. See, Jeff Sabelski says, if I work for Yamaha, I'd want everything I could get my hands on from Yamaha. So ironically, it's easier for me sometimes to get equipment from other competitive companies than Yamaha. So, but yeah, they do make great stuff. So. All right, so we see Sable Winters on the live stream. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so it says about the UR22C interface. Instead of Focusrite now, I have problems with latency. Though in all YouTube advertising, it says it worked fine. I'm doing something wrong. Mac with enough memory. So one of the things you could do if you're having latency and you can't figure it out. So the first thing to do is when you go to your audio interface, go to your studio menu to studio setup, and when you click here, go to the control panel and minimize the latency here in the samples. So, and as we work with that, also, it could be that latency is imposed by a number of different plugins that are part of the project. And one quick way to see if it's plugin related is if you click right here in the lower left-hand corner, there's a button called Constraint Delay Compensation. And what that'll do is if there's plugins that are imposing latency, instead of you having to manually go through one by one and deactivate or turn off plugins, this will go through and just kind of turn off all the plugins that could be causing latency issues. So it's either going to be a buffer size or it's going to be probably plugins in your project that are causing latency. So if you have like mastering plugins, like in your master bus, stuff like that, those can all cause a lot of latency. So try those things and that will probably take care of it for you. And congratulations on your UR22C. It is a great interface. Okay, just reading through comments. So we see from Jeff Sabelski, Greg, are there panning issues when using stereo reverb FXs to mono audio tracks for newbies when dialing placement spectrums and orchestral staging of sections? For example, should mono FXs be used? So I think for orchestral stuff, primarily the cohesion that people are often looked to create is the stereo reverb. So, and it's, if you find that you're losing your panning sense because of the reverb, just send less of the reverb via the send. And that should give it more of its kind of directional system or directional kind of perspective of where that instrument is sitting within the orchestra. So. See, Michael Teams just says Heidelberg is beautiful. I got to sneak out to Heidelberg once at a Frankfurt show many years ago. Enjoyed going there. All right, so we see, hi, how do you export a binaural mix from Atmos? So I think it's when you use like the Mix 6-2 plugin. So Let me just come. I haven't tried this yet, but I think if we let me just set my sample rate and my buffer size here. Hang on one sec, my son is knocking. All right, sorry about the interruption there. All right, so let's say we do our binaural here. All right, so let's say if at this point we go to the mix console. Let's come over here. So I think if you do kind of using the, I think that you could do it there, but most of the time people would actually, for delivery would just actually render it as kind of the Dolby Atmos. But I think you could do it with the built-in, and it might have to be in the control room. Let me just, yeah, so you might do it in a control room with the mix convert plugin, but I could do some more research on it and probably have a better answer on Tuesday. So you just see Chris Harrison. Where can I report a bug? I'm using the warp measures to do film scoring. Lots of warping. Also, almost every measure, and the measures get off unless I switch time base back and forth from time code back. So if you want to email me, I could pass it along, but I think you could also just even send it. I think it's support@steinberg.de. But if you want to send me kind of a detailed description of how you're doing it. All right, so see Jeff Sabelsky saying, Greg, please don't retire yet. So my son's only in 3rd grade, so I want to get him in college at least. So I should have another 10, 12 years, hopefully. That time I'll have answered 1 million questions on live streams. Something like that, all right. All right, so we have a question from Diego. Is there a way to close all the automation lanes from the channels in a session all at once without having to do them one by one? All right, so let's say we have a number of automation lanes open here. I'll duplicate some tracks. All right, and all right, so I think if we go to the automation panel, which is not that button, but if we click right here, that you could just hide all automation lanes and you could show used automation lanes. So just hit F6 and then you could hide all of your automation lanes. If you get paid by the hour, you could, gladly close them one at a time. But I would use that, Diego. All right, I know I had just one or two questions that were kind of sent in, so let me go to those before we run out of time. Thanks for all the great discussion and questions. All right. So we say just a question. How does Greg choose a drum pattern in Groove Agent? There are so many things to think about first and foremost that are most important. So a lot of times, I may start off when I'm using Groove Agent, if I'm like writing a song, I may start with just, I may start with, something stylistically. So let's say if we open up Groove Agent, we could actually see different styles. And a lot of times, don't necessarily, you could use a blues pattern for a hip hop track, stuff like that. But let's say we open up our instrument track, and as we look at Groove Agent, all right, I'll just do a new project here. Sorry, since this is all Atmos up. So when you go to load kit, I'll just okay, if I'm doing jazz stuff, there's so I'll look kind of by genres. And a lot of times I may just kind of, audition my different kits. So say, okay, we'll come over here, we'll load this one up. Okay, so I think this is maybe Simon Phillips kit. But, and just kind of listen to it. But I will just kind of trigger the patterns often via MIDI and just try different ideas. And we all kind of have you may notice as a basis for drums, I often go to Forget the Past. And that's just something I know kind of works as a standard kit. And then I could work with that. So you may find your different go-to kits and different sounds and patterns. But, you could always try different, just because, you have a kit in one style, you could try a different pattern, and you could come up with really interesting results like that. But it's just kind of experimentation. And, whenever you have 20 minutes, just go through and, listen to a number of different patterns, and then just say, okay, you'll have the little system. So you could add more stars. So you could find the ones that you like that maybe you want to start with. All right, so we had a question. Why is it that the MIDI remote, some parameters like solo, mute, record, have the toggle attribute that you can modify, and many others such as listen, next preset, next mapping page, etc. don't? This makes that for all those parameters, you have to press twice the assigned button. All right, so I kind of set up my in my MIDI remote area, I set up some of the functions here. So let's say I add a number of audio tracks. Okay, so when we come over here, let's say first one I want to do, I have this solo. So let's say, so I didn't notice that doing my mapping. So here I have, let's say I'll just set this to solo. So I'll just hit the particular, I'll come over here to my mapping editor. So let's say I just want to come here and I just wanted to So we'll do that for solo. So I'll apply mapping. So when I hit the pad here, we could just solo the particular track. So I come here, hit the pad, that one solos. Now I also went through and assigned listen under the edit in key command and next preset. So let's say if I wanted to do this, and I'm just going to hit this button once here. So you can see that as I hit that button, and let me open up the channel so we can see the full channel view, that when I hit the listen button, I just hit it once and it's turned on, and I hit it again and it's turned off. So if I hit solo, that's just kind of the same exact behavior on my controller. So, and it's just drum pads on my Nectar controller. And let's try the next preset. And I think I have that set for here. So we just use next preset under key commands. So open up an insert. So say I want to go to my compressor, and I open up the presets here, select one, and then I'm just going to hit kind of the let me just try but that functions kind of the same way. So let me know if I did something differently on my listen and next preset, but those kind of function the same exact way for me as solo. And see if maybe your MIDI remote is sending the messages differently between the different parameters. All right, let's jump back to our live stream. Questions. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you learned something, make sure you hit the like button. All right. Okay, read through more comments. Okay, so we see Greg, how to map a new MIDI controller pads, etc. So as we were here, Sable, we could just as we have these, one of the things you could do if you wanted to do like particular functions, like okay, I want this to turn on once I have, and we could just hit the particular pad from the pad itself once we have it defined in the MIDI remote. And if you needed to add these pads, let me just reread the question real quick. Okay, so we'll just do this from scratch. So let's say I'll select all of these. We'll go into like our mapping editor. So if I have a number of pads, I'm just going to capture the particular pads right there. So now if I wanted to define these pads for functions, if we go out of we could go to the mapping assistant, or we could actually say, okay, I want this pad here to turn on metronome. So you could say pick up for MIDI remote, and then we could just say, okay, now I just wanted to apply that. Or we could just come here and say, let's activate cycle. And for particular pads that we could, just come over here, select different parameters, and then we could map functions from keyboard shortcuts or just by right clicking and catching and selecting pickup MIDI for, and then we could map different controllers like so. All right, going through some more. Reading through. Let's see, Cubase John goes, I will die if Greg wouldn't be the spokesman for Cubase. It wouldn't even feel the same. So I'm sure other people could do a great job as well. So. And I don't even get to work with Steinberg directly, so I just work for their U.S. distributor. Maybe one day I'll get lucky. I could be a Steinberg employee. All right, I know we're running short on times. Let's see if there's a quick question. So you just see a quick question. Hey, Greg, is there a way to somehow link multiple stereo dynamic processing plugins to a 4.0, 5.0, 5.1 source? So if it's a VST3 plugin, and if it's the plugin has followed the specs, then it will automatically work in whatever kind of surround configuration that you're in. All right, so with that, we're just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. We'll be doing this again next Tuesday, whatever date, I guess it'll be May 10th. So we look forward to seeing everyone back then. And if you've learned something, make sure you hit the like button and that you have subscribed to the channel. And look forward to seeing everyone next week. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy and have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Goodbye.